Hey guys, so for this post, I'm going to be showing the process that I took to convert a chest freezer into a cold plunge. So this is actually a follow-up of the video that I posted 3 weeks ago, which was from hesitant to habitual, my daily cold plunge routine. I talked about like my inspiration for creating a cold plunge and my daily morning routine for using it. So this post is therefore most applicable to someone who has, watched that video, and if you have, thank you, and kind of wants to create a cold plunge for themselves. I think the DIY option is definitely the best way to go because buying a commercial cold plunge costs you upwards of $4,000, and I just don't think it's worth it because I've gotten great use out of my cold plunge so far, and it's working fantastic. So I don't necessarily need to include this in here right now, but before we dive into the making of the cold plunge, I do want to say, so I did skip the past 2 weeks of videos. I had spring break and I had, I started a new job, but for the most part it was just me being lazy. And so if you watched my video about like my dopamine detox, I didn't do it this month and I didn't post any videos. Like, you think that's a coincidence? No, it's not. So this post is going to be a lot more experimental than the other ones. And I kind of want to be more experimental going forward as well. I normally have a pretty strict script that I stick to because it makes it easier to talk to the camera when I know the words to say. But trying to think up of the words on the spot, like I'm doing right now, talking to the camera, is fairly difficult, but I want to try and get used to it, so that's what I'm going to do. But regardless, there's a lot of good stuff in here, so I'd appreciate if you continued watching. So the first thing that you have to worry about is actually buying the chest freezer. I definitely start with a Facebook Marketplace or Craigslist or something like that because you can find chest freezers that are in pretty good condition for a fraction of the price that you'd buy. So I can dive into my story. I did go on Facebook Marketplace. I couldn't find a freezer, and so then I decided to commit. I went to a scratch and dent place and bought a chest freezer, a pretty big one, for around $700, which wasn't bad. Hurt the bank a little bit, but I was really willing to commit to this. But then the next day, some lady had like a free chest freezer, right? So I had to take her up on that. Went and picked it up. Brought the free chest freezer here, and then returned the one that I got from the scratch and dent place, and the free chest freezer didn't work. So then I had to get rid of the free chest freezer, go back to the scratch and dent place, and get a whole new freezer. In the end, it all worked out, but it was a little bit of a hassle. Okay, so the next step was to seal the freezer. So I use something called JB's Water Weld, which is apparently like the industry standard. It's really durable stuff, and a lot of people suggested that. One thing I do want to mention with the chest freezer when you're buying the chest freezer is don't get one that's lined with metal. Get one that's lined with plastic. Apparently they last longer when you're using it as a cold plunge. But the ones lined with plastic are going to come with a lot of cracks and seams that you have to seal up. So as you're going to see, this was a video taken by my younger brother Maliki. I appreciate him taking the video, but it's very shaky and blurry, but so hang in with me. But it shows that I sealed all of the cracks that you could see. The plug at the bottom, I sealed that as well. I'm now going to switch to a different video where it shows me combining the JB Water Weld so that it activates and just applying it to the seams like so. So this actually did take a while, but that's the only step that isn't plug and play for this cold plunge. I used 5 tubes of JB's Water Weld. I've seen on some places where they say that you need more, but so far there's no leaks, and I think I'm pretty happy with the amount that I used. You could probably get away with 4, but I think it's better to be safe than sorry. As far as the top lining went, I did use traditional caulk. I decided not to go with the JBs on the top because it's not going to be submerged underwater, and just having some sort of sealant is going to be enough. Some people who have gone ahead and converted chest freezers into cold plunges that they just use a timer to turn off and on the freezer, because if you leave the freezer on, it actually will freeze the water solid, and you don't want that happening. So what I've decided to use, and a lot of other people have gone with as well, is using the Inkbird. The model that I choose to go with for the Inkbird was the Inkbird ITC 308. And I think it's fantastic. Basically, it has a little temperature probe that you stick in the water, and it'll turn off and on the freezer based off of the temperatures that you have it set at. So I have my freezer set at 45 degrees, which is kind of standard as far as these cold plunges go. And as soon as the water warms up to 47, it'll kick the freezer on. And then as soon as it goes back down to 45, it'll turn the freezer off. And it's as simple as that. It fluctuates back and forth. So the next thing to discuss is keeping the water clean. If you wake up every morning and you get in and you're oily and maybe your feet are kind of dirty, it's going to get disgusting very quickly. So the two main things that you need is filtration and sanitation. What I do for sanitation for the first months is I would just rinse off with a hose beforehand so I wasn't so oily, and I dip my feet in a bucket of water so that my feet weren't dirty as well. And then about once every other week, I'd go ahead and use a siphon to take out the water, and then I cleaned it out with vinegar. You know, that was going to be my method before I started to use chemicals. So I actually tried this for the first time today. I went to Leslie's and I got chlorine and dry acid. The lady said to use a couple tablespoons of chlorine and a couple ounces of dry acid, which, you know, are obviously very accurate measurements. I probably should have put this earlier in the video, but when you're dealing with water and electrical devices in the same vicinity, safety is extremely important. So the first thing that you want to do is you want to check that the outlet that you're plugging the Inkbird and the filter into has GFCI built into it. What GFCI does is it protects against severe electrical shocks. If you don't have GFCI in that outlet, you can buy an adapter for pretty cheap. And then you want to make sure that you're either unplugging, or if you have an extender, you can just turn it off. But there should be no electricity running anytime that you get into the freezer. Okay, so I think I'm done. I think this is the end of the video. I'm hoping that it turned out all right. I did record a lot of stuff in preparation for this video, but it was kind of just too all over the place, and I kind of built it up in my head to make this fantastic, comprehensive video, and I just never got around to it. So I'm just gonna get something out. I hope that you gain value from it, and I hope that you ask me questions, because I am so willing to answer questions for things that I left out. Going forward, I am going to make much more technical videos. You know, I'm really into like programming and like more specifically like AI ML. I'm doing business analytics in school, so it's all in that kind of field. And so I want to talk about, you know, maybe advances in the AI industry, or even like the blockchain industry or something like that. So I'm going to be kind of transitioning from this, you know, well-being life stuff. So yeah, I appreciate you guys watching as long as you have, and yeah, I thank you.